I have judged piano competitions for 31 years, and I will tell you plainly, I expected nothing from the boy in the gray sweater. That is not a kind thing to admit. But if you want the truth of what happened that afternoon at the Harwell Regional Conservatory, truth is where you have to start. The Harwell Autumn Competition draws serious young pianists, academy students, prodigies with private tutors, teenagers who have been groomed for exactly this kind of stage. The Grand Hall seats 400, and on the day in question every seat was taken. Chairman Aldrich Morrow, 22 years on the panel, a man who had once studied under one of the great European masters and never let anyone get it, had been in a particular mood since morning. 3 of the competitors had already played. 2 of them had been, in his words, technically adequate and spiritually absent. The third had brought her teacher to tears, which Morrow noted with a brief, polished nod before writing something in his ledger that none of the rest of us could see. Then the door at the back of the stage opened. Thomas Vanek walked out. He was 12 years old. That was the first thing you noticed. Not because he looked young for his age, because the Grand Hall's Steinway concert grand was enormous, and he was not. He crossed the stage in a way I can only describe as careful, as though he were carrying something fragile and did not want to be seen doing it. No wave to the audience, no acknowledgement of the panel. He sat, adjusted the bench once, set his hands in his lap, and looked at the keys for a long moment before he looked up. He looked at nothing in particular. He looked inward. Morrow leaned toward me. "The Vanek boy," he said very quietly. A particular tone he reserved for competitors he had already decided about. The application listed no conservatory affiliation, no regular teacher on record. Homeschooled, apparently. The mother taught him. A small pause. She passed away in the spring. I said nothing. We were not supposed to discuss the candidate's personal circumstances during adjudication. Morrow knew that as well as I did. What I did not know, what none of us on the panel knew until Thomas Vanek opened his folder and set it on the music stand, was what piece he had chosen to play. When I saw it, I actually leaned forward in my chair. Ravel's Gaspard de la Nuit. There are pieces that professionals decline. There are pieces that concert pianists with 30 years of stage experience approach with caution, that they rehearse for months before they dare a public performance. Gaspard de la Nuit is one of those pieces. It has been called, without exaggeration, the most technically demanding work in the solo piano repertoire. Undine alone, the first of its 3 movements, requires a level of hand independence and control that breaks trained pianists. In 31 years of judging, I had never once heard a competitor at any junior or youth level even attempt it. I had heard professionals attempt it, and not finish. I looked at Morrow. For the first time that day, he was not writing in his ledger. He was looking at the stage. "He won't get past the second page," he said. I am not proud of what I thought in that moment. I thought he was probably right. Thomas Vanek placed both hands on the keys. He did not look at the music stand again. He had it memorized. And then, very quietly, so quietly that the first phrase seemed to rise out of the silence of the hall rather than be played into it, he began. "The opening of Undine is a shimmer. It is water heard from a distance, a ripple across a still surface. The right hand tracing an almost impossible pattern of 16th notes, while the left hand holds a melody that has no business existing inside such delicacy. When great pianists play it, you feel the 2 things pulling apart, the shimmer and the song, and then, gradually, miraculously, holding together. When lesser pianists play it, one of the 2 collapses within 30 seconds. Thomas Vanek held both. Not just held, wove them. The way you weave something without looking at your hands, because your hands already know. I heard the row behind me go quiet. I had been listening to the ambient noise of the hall without registering it. The small shuffles and whispers of 400 people waiting for a child to stumble, and somewhere in the first 40 bars it stopped. I did not notice it stop. I noticed, a full 2 minutes into the piece, that I could hear my own breathing and the breathing of the woman beside me, and nothing else. Morrow had put down his pen. Undine builds. It builds the way a river builds. Not suddenly, not with drama, but with an inevitability that you feel before you understand it. By the 5th page, where the piece calls for the right hand to hold a sustained melody note while executing a cascading broken chord figure below it, technical demand that most professionals iron into their playing for months. Thomas Vanek was not merely executing, he was speaking. There is a difference, and a hall of 400 people who cannot read a note of music still knows the difference when they hear it. The melody sang with a particular color I can only describe as grief held open, not grief collapsed into, but grief accepted, carried, transformed into something luminous. I thought of what Morrow had told me. The mother taught him. She passed away in the spring. He was playing her. Legibet, the second movement, is the still center of the piece, an execution bell, tolling in a single repeated note while the harmony shifts beneath it, with the patience and weight of something ancient. It is a meditation on something already over, already lost. Thomas played it without sentiment and without hurry, and the hall sat inside it, like people sitting inside a truth they recognized without wanting to. The woman to my left had stopped pretending to take notes. When Scarbo, the final movement, the demon, arrived, I gripped the edge of the table. If Andin is delicacy and Legibet is stillness, Scarbo is controlled fury. It is the piece that breaks hands. It demands leaps of more than 2 octaves executed at full speed with no reduction in dynamic clarity, dramatic runs of a kind that only years of specific technical drilling make clean, and a climax that Ravel himself called a kind of musical nightmare. Professional pianists practice Scarbo for months and still perform it with a visible cost. Thomas Vanek played it with the focused, furious calm of someone who had been living inside the piece long enough that the piece had become a part of him. When the final chord landed, and it landed the way a storm lands, complete, sudden, and then gone, the silence in the hall lasted 6 full seconds. I counted them. I was counting because I was holding very still. The way you hold still after something has just redrawn the shape of your understanding. Then the hall came to its feet, not in sections, not the polite, gradual applause of a regional competition audience doing its duty. All at once. 400 people standing before the sound had finished dying in the rafters. The noise of it filling the grand hall from the floor to the vaulted ceiling. Thomas Vanek, sitting at the piano with hands one still at the keys, and his eyes open, looking at some middle distance that the rest of us could not see. Aldrich Morrow was on his feet. I watched him stand. I had known the man for 9 years, and I had never seen him rise for a junior competitor. I had never seen him rise for many professionals. He stood with his hands held together, and he did not move them apart. In the usual, rhythmic clapping, he held them pressed, the way a man holds his hands when he is not applauding but acknowledging. He acknowledged for a long time. I have thought about that afternoon often in the years since. About what Thomas Vanek played and how he played it, and about where a boy of 12 learns to render a piece like that, not as a technical exercise but as an act of speaking. I have thought about what it means to carry something that is too heavy for words, and to find, in the work itself, the exact shape of the thing you are carrying. There are moments in this work, and I have been fortunate enough to witness a handful of them in 31 years, when music does what nothing else can. It crosses into territory where language runs out. It says the true thing, the thing that grief and love and loss collapse into at their center, where the edges dissolve and the feeling is simply completely itself. A 12-year-old boy in a gray sweater said that thing on a stage in the Harwell Grand Hall one afternoon in October. I have not forgotten a bar of it. I do not expect to.